Auburn season is closing in fast, but should there be pressure on Hugh Freeze in year 3? Welcome on into the Auburn Express, powered by the War Report. I'm your host, Mike G, and thank you so much for making us your first listen of every single day. Joining me as he does every single week, this time on Tuesday instead of Wednesday, my good friend Thrift Bearinger, a co-owner and host over at Georgia Alabama Sports Live. You can actually catch him on Sports Vision's radio here in Columbus, Georgia. Thrift, let's jump right in. Coach Hugh Freeze made some comments in the media recently about pressure, in this season. He did an interview after a golf tournament, but at the War Report, we got our own comments from Hugh Freeze on our own interview with Hugh Freeze. So I want to play this clip for you, and then we'll get into his comments and what they mean for Auburn season.
Let me ask you this way.
Yep.
Do you feel like there's more pressure on year 3 now because of how the first 2 years went? How do you feel as a head coach?
Yeah, I honestly don't feel pressure a whole lot. Mm-hmm. But I'm a realist. And there's no way in the world that anyone can sit in this chair and think that our fans should expect anything more than a leap in year 3. And so if that brings pressure to somebody, or I'm happy with those expectations, that means we've done something to give them excitement and to believe that it can happen. I believe it can happen. And so I don't call it pressure. I just think, man, it's the reasonable expectation. I think reasonable expectations in year 1 were something. I think reasonable expectations in year 2 were something. I don't think we met them because of the things we just talked about. Year 3, I think there should be even more expectations.
Right.
And so I'm good with that and happy to carry that weight, if you call it, along with our other coaches and our players.
So what's your reasonable expectation for year 3? Is it 7 wins? Is it 8 wins? Is it 9 wins?
Yeah.
Is it making a bowl game?
Man, I don't ever I hate to put a win total out there or anything because you have no idea what's going to happen in these games against other really good teams.
But you can't miss a bowl game.
Yeah. We for certainly we should be bowl eligible. Mm-hmm. All right, but hopefully it's more.
Hugh Freeze on whether they should feel pressure here in year 3. Lots of things to unpack here. Let's start with the idea that he does not feel pressure. I think that this gets misinterpreted by a lot of people, Thrift. There's a difference between not feeling pressure and not sensing urgency. And certainly, I think that there is a sense of urgency around year 3.
I completely agree with that. And Mike, come on, man. This is coach talk 101. Plain and simple. Is a coach going to come out and say, I feel the pressure? Are they going to look weak-minded? And I'm not saying that is weak-minded because I feel like anybody would feel pressure in that situation. But is any coach going to come out and admit that? I don't think so. Now, I will say you did a great job interviewing it and making him feel comfortable. But for him to say not feeling the pressure, I feel like, come on, man. Is he serious with that? Knowing that this is a make or break year, that if he doesn't show major improvements, he could be gone. And what would probably make it even worse is that the next guy that comes in is coming into a gold mine full of a lot of talent if they don't leave through the portal, unlike the situation he stepped in 3 years ago when he took over the Auburn job. So I find that hard to believe he's not feeling some pressure, but hey, more power to him if he's not, and he feels confident with this team going into next year.
Yeah, I think that, again, difference between feeling pressure and sensing urgency. I think he senses the urgency around this season. It just is what it is. Auburn is a pressure job. Right. It is. So, there's an expectation here, which is the next part of what he said that I want to address. The reasonable expectations that he's okay with because they've given fans a reason to expect better. Which they certainly have through recruiting. You've gone out and you've got a top 7 recruiting class in year 2, which was essentially his first full year recruiting, Thrift. Yeah. He says that he's one recruiting class away from closing the talent gap between Auburn and the Georgias and the Texases. And I think it may have already caught Alabama, if you ask me. They're a quarterback away from matching Alabama. But,
right.
If the talent gap has closed, then it comes down purely the coaching and out scheming the other coach on the field. But what do you think about his comments in saying, look, these expectations are a result of the job that we've done so far, which is why people are expecting more.
Which is a good thing. I am with him, but you can't be patted on the back for what ifs. Like, you're bringing in great talent. Good for you. So does the rest of the top 15, 20 programs that are in the country, but they win. So they take it a step further. So I'm glad you're able to do that, but we can't act like Gus Malzahn didn't bring in top 10 classes. Did he do it at the frequency now Hugh Freeze has done it in 3 consecutive? I don't know. I mean, Gus Malzahn was a pretty daggum good recruiter. Heck, even Gene Chizik was a daggum good recruiter. Talent has come to Auburn. Is it sustained success year in and year out, being a contender every year, not once every 4 years, being a contender every year. That's where Auburn has struggled, unlike Georgia and Alabama. And then you ask them about giving a win total. Have you ever seen a head coach in the history of interviews give a win total for that next year than Rex Ryan? And Rex Ryan didn't even get a win total. He just said he was going to the Super Bowl. I don't know anyone else is guaranteeing anything for that next upcoming season. So I wasn't surprised he didn't give a win total, but he kept saying the bowl game. There's 150 billion bowl games, Mike. Making a bowl game is not a big deal like it used to be maybe 20 or 30 years ago. I mean, he obviously knows 8 or 9 wins in a bowl game is totally different than 6-6 in a bowl game.
Correct.
So
yes.
I think he understands that. He knows what the expectations are for this program and where they need to be, especially for the money that they're paying him and what everyone thought Hugh Freeze could turn Auburn into by year 3 and year 4. So listen, I don't have a problem really with his answer at all. I think it was pretty much coach speak that we are accustomed to seeing. These guys don't want to speak themselves into trouble. But are you expecting him to come out and say 9 or 10 wins? In that interview, when you asked him that question, did you think he would come out with a win total?
Yeah, I think that in year 3, he said later on in the interview that it is reasonable for Auburn fans to expect a leap in year 3. I think he said in that clip, actually, expect a leap in year 3. And that leap is not, I just want to clarify, that leap is not from 5 wins to 8 wins. It's from where they should have been 6 or 7 wins to something greater, which to me is 2 to 3 wins more. That's 8 to 9 wins. Once you put a 10-win total on it, you're talking about Auburn making the college football playoff. There will be no 10-win SEC team that doesn't make the playoff, Thrift. Missouri, Ole Miss, Alabama all should have been playoff teams. The only way for them to miss the playoffs was to come up short of that 10-win total, which they all did. So they all missed the playoff. But if Auburn wins 10 games, they're in the playoff. Right? Yeah. Even if there are only 2 losses, or Georgia and Alabama at home, they're making the playoff. So he would be foolish to come out and say, we're making the playoff this year, because that's what you would be saying with 10 wins. But he said a leap. Well, you know what a leap is. I know what a leap is. Right. A leap is 8 or 9 wins. Right. So, I don't know that the coach necessarily has to spell it out, but that's why I asked the question. It was, hey, just so that we're on record about what should have happened last year and what should happen this year, because what happened last year wasn't supposed to happen. So you're not leaping from 5 to whatever. You're leaping from what you should have won last year to where you should be this year. And that's how I saw it. Comments here, man, before we move on.
Yeah, dude, I listen, I agree with everything that you're saying. I think people are in an uproar right now for things that they shouldn't be in an uproar about. To say that Hugh Freeze doesn't know that he needs to make a big leap, and I'll even say wins, 8 or 9 wins. Come on, man. You're really questioning the IQ of what we think is a really good head football coach in college football. And nor do we want him to turn into Butch Jones and saying the champions of life. We don't want millions of excuses, which we don't get from Hugh Freeze. He comes out and he says, listen, last year should not have happened. We know we need to be better, and we want to make a huge leap. I have no problem with anything he said. He was just short of giving a win total. Again, you don't see most coaches doing that, but he understands what he needs to do to make sure that he can come back as the Auburn coach next year.
Yeah, look, what is a reasonable expectation? Coach Hugh Freeze addressed that in the clip that we played. We'll talk about that right after a quick word from our friends at the Vibe Vault. If you're in the Phoenix City, Columbus area and you're looking to get fresh for the weekend, visit our friends at the Vibe Vault. You can find them at 3462 Crosswinds Road, Suite I in Phoenix City, Alabama. That's on Highway 431, right across the street from Chattahoochee Valley Community College and next to the Renfro Supermarket and Marco's Pizza. The Vibe Vault, not just barbers, lifestyle consultants, helping keeping you fresh for the weekend. Also, our friends at the Rogue Shop. Visit rogueshop.com and use code RAPPORT to get 15% off that Rogue Shop order. Pain, sleep, stress, anxiety, whatever ails you in life, the Rogue Shop has something that has you covered. Again, therogueshop.com. Use code RAPPORT to get 15% off that Rogue Shop order. And last but certainly not least, our friends at Golden's Cast Iron. Visit goldenscastiron.com/WR. Use code Get Your Weight Up for 15% off your weights and code TWR for $65 off fire pits and Kamado grills. Spring is here. Summer is on the way. You want to be outside, making memories with your family around the grill. Work out, grill out, chill out with Golden's Cast Iron. Thrift, let's jump back in here. I asked him, what is a reasonable expectation? Again, the coach that you speak of, he said, I don't want to put a total on it. And I get that. Putting a number on it is not a smart thing to do. But my follow-up was, certainly, you can't miss a bowl game. So we all know there's a number that will be deemed acceptable and one that will not be deemed acceptable. Later on in that interview, well, we talked about 7-8 wins. He kind of said, well, if we win 7 games, I think it's, how do we win those 7 games? Or, And I try to just insert that at 7 games, in my opinion, you probably lost a game that you weren't supposed to lose. At 8 wins, you probably won a game that a lot of people didn't think you were going to win. And that's how razor sharp the margin is for this coach in this season. Now, he agreed with that sentiment, certainly, but I think that at the end of the day, there's more urgency on this season because you had losing seasons your first 2 seasons. And the investment in Auburn football from a monetary standpoint is as high as it's ever been. You got a $92 million performance center, Thrift. Mm-hmm. You're spending millions of dollars in NIL to get top level athletes into Auburn, and it's working. You have to produce results. This is a pro model that we're shifting to at the college level. I think Hugh Freeze understands that. So when I ask the question, what is a reasonable expectation? I think that he knows that that's 8 wins or more this season.
I think in his gut, he knows that he has a roster to win 8 or 9 games, but he does not want to put his foot in his mouth saying, if we don't win 8 or 9, because then at the end of the year, and if things happen, he will have to eat his words, and it probably will end up being in his termination from the Auburn job. So I get why he didn't say it, but in my head, him and the staff, from what they brought in, how they feel about Jackson Arnold, they know it has to be 8 or 9 wins this year, Mike. And anything less than that, I would not accept. I think 7 and 5 is mediocre at best in the SEC. That's below middle of the pack. That's saying you're right. You're losing to a team like an Arkansas that you should beat, or a Missouri that you should beat, on top of maybe a Baylor, and then Alabama and Georgia you got to throw in there as well. Come on, man. Like, at this point, when are we going to start seeing Auburn becoming the team that we expected under Hugh Freeze, which is just being a contender? That doesn't mean win a championship every year. We're talking about being in the conversation when November starts, not thinking you may not make a bowl game when November starts. That's how it's been the last 2 years. This year, when November comes around, we need to be having a conversation. If Auburn does this, they're going to be in the SEC title. If Auburn finishes this way, they could be in the playoff. If we're not having that conversation by November, Hugh Freeze has failed this 3rd season.
Yeah, we did a segment where we talked about toughest matchups and easiest matchups. So I want to revisit the schedule since you brought it up, and I have the graphic here. You talk about where they should be come November. And I want to remind people, in Brian Harson's first year, he was 6-2 headed into November, and people were talking about him like he was going to be SEC Coach of the Year, and it all fell apart.
Dude, let me add in on that too, Mike. Not only were they 6-2, remember one loss was to Penn State. They only had one SEC loss. If they had won out like they should have and beaten A&M that they were better than, beat Mississippi State and South Carolina, that Alabama game would have been a winner-take-all to the SEC championship. That's where Auburn was heading into November. And then, of course, everything went downhill. But at least he got us to a point where in November, we at least felt like we had a chance to do something special. Did it turn out that way? No. But we haven't had that conversation since 2021.
Yeah, I don't want everybody to go off the rail saying, Mike G said Brian Hartson was a great coach. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying there was a year recently, we have the reference, where Auburn was 6-2 headed into November, and that team had a tougher road there, I think, than this team has. So let's take a look at it real quick. Again, Baylor, you and I discussed this last week. This game is actually August the 29th. It's been moved to Friday. There are a couple of games. I think Colorado plays that night, and Cincinnati plays that night. But Baylor, Auburn should be a key matchup there on that date. You've got a couple of cupcakes here in the non-conference before you move on. South Alabama there on the 13th, and then you've got Oklahoma, A&M, and Georgia over to open your SEC stretch, Thrift. I think if Auburn can win the first three and get out of this 3-game stretch that starts at Oklahoma and ends at Georgia, 1-2, that's a 4-2 start to the season. You then get what I think will be a pretty mediocre Missouri team, followed by Arkansas on the road, followed by Kentucky at home, who you waxed up last year, right? Vanderbilt and Mercer before the Iron Bowl. Thrift, that's a 5-game winning streak just sitting there waiting
easily.
To be had. Come on, man. So half of your 3 weeks of your November is Kentucky, Vanderbilt, Mercer. Auburn should be 3-1 in November. 100%. If they're not, I don't know what to say to that.
I'm with you, man. And again, look at that 5-game stretch. You name me the last time Auburn had a 5-game stretch, and what they're playing Missouri, that it's not the same Missouri team that won 9 and 10 games the previous 2 years. Arkansas, who has not been relevant since 2021. They've been okay the last couple years, and then last year didn't even make a bowl game. Kentucky went 4-8 last year, and Vanderbilt, even with Pavia coming back, you're still always going to be better than Vanderbilt. There's no excuse in that. And then you end with Mercer. That should be 5-0. And then if you're talking about being 4-2 in that stretch, that's 9-2 going in the Alabama game, and that game could decide who's going to be in the playoffs. If you beat Alabama at home and finish 10-2, you're in the playoffs, man. So I am with you. There is no way you can look at this schedule unless we are just completely wrong on Arkansas, Missouri, and Kentucky. We could be, but then also doesn't matter how good they are. If you look at each roster, if Auburn's playing up to their potential and their roster, and Kentucky, Arkansas, and Vanderbilt are playing up to their best, Auburn's best is going to be better than their best. So in the end, Auburn still controls its destiny. I'm with you. This is an easy 8 or 9 win by the time you get to Alabama. No excuse otherwise. And I think Hugh knows this. He just doesn't want to put his foot in the mouth and just come out and plain on say it. But listen, I like everything I'm seeing so far this offseason. I like the mindset and the confidence Hugh is exerting with this roster. Let's just see if it can all be put together heading into 2025.
Let me say this. This is the part that he doesn't want to say publicly, Thrift. Internally, there is a belief that they have a really good football team on their hands this year. They got their guy quarterback. Earlier in that interview, he told me Jackson Arnold is my starter, flat out. I brought him here to start. I thought he was a freak in high school. I've been, recruiting him since high school. I still think he's a freak. He's a former 5-star dude. They like Deuce Knight a lot. They love Deuce Knight, and he's come along a lot faster than they thought he was going to come along. As a matter of fact, he came along at the rate that they thought Walker White was going to come along, Thrift, and it didn't work out for Walker here, but Deuce seems to be picking things up really, really well. And then you bring in Ashton Daniels, who provides a safe floor in case Deuce Knight is not ready to be the next man up in case of injury to Jackson Arnold or poor play. We saw, what happened at Florida with Graham Mertz and DJ Lagway. They ended up with DJ Lagway, and now he's considered a top 3 quarterback returning this season. That's how talented that young man is. Deuce Knight has that same type of talent, so they really like their quarterback room. They love their receivers. They love their running back room, and they think that they fixed this offensive line, bringing in Xavier Chaplin and Mason Murphy in here to do this thing. Dude, this could be a really good football team if they can call plays right and they can get a good balance of run and pass, because here's the thing. Auburn got out of control throwing it at times, and every time they gave Jarquez Hunter the ball 20 times or more, they won the game. And so I think Damari Alston has the talent to be a premier back in this league. You cannot abandon the run. You've got to stick with it. But, trusting your receivers and trusting your quarterback goes a long way to them balancing out this offense. Thrift. I think that Hugh Freeze has got his mind in the right place for this season. And, all the hubbub right now on social media is, does he have his mind in the right place if he thinks that just making a bowl game is acceptable? It's not what he said. It's not what he said, right? He understands that 6 wins is probably going to get him fired, right? He gets that. I know he gets that. But, I think that you can say that and say that I don't feel pressure in the same sentence and it be okay. Like, look, it is what it is. We've just got to win. That's it. I get it. The result is not going to change. Like, whether I feel the pressure or not is going to change what we have to do. We still have to go out and we have to meet expectations.
Yeah, it's the aggregators on social media. They'll make up anything. If they find a clip, they can just switch the words around. Obviously, me and reasonable people know what Hugh Freeze meant, but then there's other people that just want to get fired up to get fired up. I do want to add 2 more things. For one, continuity on offense and the balance and the play calling is going to be, I think, the most crucial thing. You keep talking about quarterback. I hear you on that. But if the play callers are not putting the quarterback in the right position in this offense, it doesn't matter how talented the quarterback is. So we need continuity in the play calling. And then I think Hugh Freeze and them know that a lot of teams have good rosters. All right. But not many teams have deep rosters. And I think Auburn's starting to get to that point where if there is an injury or if there is a problem, that the next man coming in is another 4 or 5 star or a transfer that can play and contribute immediately, which Auburn has not had in the last couple of seasons. So I think that also contributes to the fact why they believe so much in this roster.
Yeah, when you talk about continuity and play calling, Thrift, that's really about staying ahead of the chains on 1st and 2nd down. When you get behind the chains, look, man, from on 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8, 3rd and long, your playbook shrinks.
Right.
3rd and 3 and in, your whole playbook is open, is wide open. And so many times last year, they started the game wanting to pound the rock, but then got behind because drives stalled due to 1st and 2nd down play calling.
Yeah.
And once you get behind the chains, you find yourself behind and having to sling it around the football field to try to catch up. Again, that's where I will be looking for in the improvements and continuity that I'm looking for on 1st and 2nd down and red zone calling. If they're better in the red zone and they're better on 1st and 2nd down, and you have a kicker who can make routine kicks, which they should have with McPherson returning this year, that young man has earned my respect. Auburn needs him, not that he needed to earn my respect, but certainly we understand now the importance that he plays in the role that Auburn is going to need him to play for them to be successful this year. So, like I said, I think the expectations, the urgency, whatever you want to call it, it's on this season. They've got the schedule to do it. They've got the players to do it. They had the players to win 7 games last year. There were a bunch of fans that got up in an uproar over me saying that talent wasn't the reason that Auburn won 5 games last year. And they took it as me saying talent wasn't an issue at Auburn last year, which is not what I said, right? The difference between 5-7 and 7-5 is talent. The difference between 8-5 or 7-5 and 10-2 is coaching, right? If you have enough talent to win 8 games, the difference between you and the top of the league is likely going to be coaching.
Yeah.
And so they've got to improve both if they want to have a good season. Look, this is a fantastic conversation, Thrift. I know it's one that we will continue to have this offseason and probably again in Atlanta at Media Days at the College Football Hall of Fame. We will both be there. But before we get out of here, tell people where they can find you.
Yep, Sports Vision. You see it right here. I'm pointing at the wrong chest, but right here, Sports Vision morning show, 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. on Sports Vision 92.1 FM. We will be live every weekday morning. Myself and, of course, CJ Jones, former Georgia Bulldog and national champion. And, of course, Georgia Alabama Sports Live, all things high school related, college related, and national. Make sure to follow us on Facebook and YouTube. That is Sports Visions and Georgia Alabama Sports Live. Mike G, enjoyed it as always.
Guys, that's it for another great edition of the Auburn Express, powered by War Report. If you are watching this on replay, do us a favor, smash that super thanks button for us. Show us some love in the comments here. Help us keep the work that we're doing here going. We'll be back. Thank you so much for making us your first listen of every day, guys. If you like this content, if you like what you see, please hit like and subscribe. We are the War Report on every social media platform. CW Report on TikTok. We're signing off, and as always, War Eagle.